Hello and welcome to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. This podcast has evolved over the 5+ years since it first launched. From now on, I'm going to be talking about deepening your connection with yourself, taking inspired action, and really trusting yourself and your intuition. And also mindset, of course, but mindset of all kinds, not just business mindset. I think. Things are changing for me, as you may have noticed if you've been following me online or listening to this podcast, so anything goes here. I hope you stay along for the ride. Thank you so much for joining us today, and now let's get into this week's episode. Hello and welcome to the Into the Woods podcast, episode 301. This is your host, Holly Wharton, and I'm back with another co-hosted episode with the fabulous Joanna Hennon. Today we talk about, do you really want what you say you want? We talk about stepping into the next version of ourselves and all that entails. We share some personal stories of recent situations where we say we want something new, but we're not 100% ready to step into it. We explore what to do when we think we want something, yet we're not taking the action to get there. Or we start taking the action, the universe nudges us along, and we don't like what that looks like. Sometimes our path does not look how we think it's going to look or how we want it to look. So we talk about how to deal with that. So what are you going to learn in this episode? We're going to talk about becoming the next version of ourselves and stepping into a new identity. We discuss what it really looks like when you're between worlds. We explore how to recognize when you're experiencing the growing pains that come with spiritual growth. We share a reminder to be gentle with ourselves when we're going through transition into a new phase. We discuss why it's so important to pay attention to where we're dragging our feet in this path forward and what that means. We explore how to know when we're dragging our feet and not stepping into the next version of ourselves. We discuss the difference between wanting and choosing for and how this shift in perspective can change everything. Now, I know we've talked about this concept before, but it's something that I think took a while to really sink in for me, and I feel like I've got it now, and I think this is a really huge shift. We explore why we need to look at secondary gain and how to dig deeper to get to the root of the situation. We share a reminder that the new thing is only uncomfortable for a little bit, and then it becomes our new reality, because sometimes it can be really uncomfortable stepping outside of our comfort zone. But really what we're doing is we're expanding our comfort zone, and so it's just uncomfortable for a little bit until the thing becomes our new reality. Next, we explore why it's okay to stay where we are sometimes. We don't have to constantly be moving into new things and constantly growing, and in fact, that can be really exhausting. Finally, we explore what self-sabotage looks like, how to know when we're doing it, and what to do about it. We share a whole bunch of questions that we can ask ourselves when we're journaling or just exploring a situation, and those are going to be in the show notes. Finally, we put together, as we were doing the episode, kind of an exercise that you can do in your journal, and I've got the instructions for that in the show notes as well. So I think this is a really juicy episode. Certainly it's helped me a lot to get new perspective on something kind of crappy, or something that felt crappy that happened earlier this week. And yeah, I think I've still got some mourning to do and some grief to work through around it, but you'll hear about that in the episode. So without further ado, I will hand you over to the episode. Thank you so much for listening. Hello, Joanna.
Hi, Holly.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. I'm excited about today's episode.
We're always excited.
Well, yeah. We try not to talk about boring topics. So today we're talking about, do you really want what you say you want? We've kind of touched on, with all the episodes we did last year, talking about my house, which was not my house, in Avebury. But I think we've got kind of a different take on it today, and we have some other things to talk about around this. So how did we get on this topic?
We got on this topic because of your YouTube channel, Holly. So why don't we start with your personal story of pain?
So my personal story of pain. On Monday afternoon, I went to share about my podcast episode that launched on Monday online. And one of the things I do is I go to my YouTube channel and I update the thumbnail, like the little graphic for it. So I went to do that and I clicked on my YouTube channel and it no longer existed. And the second I saw that, I realized what had happened. And what had happened was that YouTube channel was linked to an old Google account that I don't use for email. So I hadn't logged into it at all for email, but I was using it on a regular basis for the YouTube channel. And Google had been sending me emails for some time saying, if you don't log into your account, we're going to delete it. And it was like some part of my brain didn't connect that Google account for email to my YouTube channel because it just didn't. And so I didn't log in. I didn't do anything because I thought, oh, this is great. I'm not using that account. Good for it to go away, declutter things. I just won't take action and it will go away. And I won't have to delete it myself. Well, it also deleted my YouTube channel, which had, a couple thousand subscribers. It had my super video that had over 100,000 views, which pains me so much. And I lost it all. And then I spent 3 hours with Google support going here and there trying to get it back. And a couple people said that they thought I should be able to get it back, but the final person said no. So I'm in the process now of, I feel like I'm still in denial. Part of me wants to dedicate an hour of my time today to calling Google support again and seeing if I get a different person, if I'll get a different answer. And I originally intended to do that, but part of me thinks that this is the perfect opportunity to let go of the past and start fresh with a new channel.
And so this is what we were talking about, because Holly has been moving on to kind of different topics and a different presence and a different focus area. So Holly, with your book coming out now, I don't know when this episode airs.
It's going to come out a week after the book launch, so it's out there. So
Holly's book has just launched. Yay!
Yay!
If trees could talk, go buy it. It's awesome.
Yay!
But that kind of, we always said, Holly and I do a lot of masterminding. So we always said that book is the beginning of a new chapter. So it totally makes sense that somehow the kind of remnants of the old chapter are falling away, whether by choice or kind of subconscious or supraconscious choice. And so we were talking about this because...
Or by self-sabotage.
I think about this all the time, and in fact have a card on my desk that reminds me of it all the time. It's a card from Colette Baron Reid's Wisdom of the Oracle deck, number 3. It's Between Worlds. It's kind of divided into 2 parts. One part is black and white and one part is color. And there's a flamingo kind of with part of it, with its bottom still in the black and white bit, and its head and its torso in the colorful bit. So it's kind of moving forward, but part of it is still in the old chapter. And so I keep it on the card is called Between Worlds. And I keep it on my desk because my work, my Soul Smart work, is all about stepping into that next version of yourself, the super successful you. And so this concept of kind of dragging your feet a little or keep hanging on to part of your old identity or stuff that belongs to the world of your old identity, it comes up a lot for both me and for all of my clients. So I decided to keep that card on my desk all the time. And then when Holly called with her YouTube thing, I was like, I have just the answer for you.
This is what you're doing.
This is what you're doing. Or, this is what you want to do. So you want to hang on to this.
Yeah.
Although it doesn't quite fit in with where you say you want to go. And so this is why we called the episode Do You Really Want What You Say You Want? Because it's different to say that you want something, say that you want a successful business, say that you want to earn $1 million next year, say that you want to be slim, fit, and healthy. And it's a different story to actually make the choices that are aligned with that and to make sure that everything in your life aligns with the thing that you say you want.
Yeah. And even though, like I said, a part of me knows this, there's a part of me that's still mourning the YouTube channel, mourning the lost videos, even though that one video with 150,000 views is totally not related to what this book is about and to my writing. It's about muscle testing. But I don't know. Part of me it kills me. And I know that's the part of me that's hanging on to the past.
Yeah. Because it's nice. It's nice to have had that success, very visible success.
Yeah.
People saw your YouTube channel. It was a good channel. It had lots of stuff. It had lots of views and all these things. And now you're starting from zero. So it's an ego thing, right?
I used to log on to see how many people had viewed that video because it made me feel good. Oh my God, I can't believe I just said that. But it was like, 10,000 more people saw it. They liked it. I mean, not everyone
Yeah.
liked it. I got a lot of hate for that video too, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's just this concept of like recognizing that the success that you say you want comes from alignment
Yeah.
with what you say you want and the energy of where you're going rather than from like seeing how many people saw your old video.
Yeah.
That doesn't even match anything you do anymore. You know,
Exactly,
like
exactly. And that's so interesting that we're talking about alignment because I just did an episode a couple of weeks ago about alignment because I'm starting to feel like I'm finally in alignment with this author thing. Like, I'm really stepping up with the author thing. People are stepping up to help me. People are offering me help. Like, it's feeling like I'm stepping into this new version of me and I'm seeing the results. And I think part of the results are my self-sabotage that led to the falling away of my YouTube channel. And so I think there's a bit of mourning that goes into letting go of the old. And I don't know if I always recognize that because a couple weeks ago when I recorded that episode, I was super excited about all the alignment that I was feeling of stepping into the new thing, the author identity. I don't know if I recognize the mourning for letting go of the old.
Yeah, I mean, I think like that mourning, that grief has to be allowed, that period of grief. Like, I think it's a really big thing. Like, this is where people pull death cards and things from Oracle decks, like you need to let something die so that something new can be born. Yeah. It's the cycle of life, right? And we forget that. We keep kind of pressing forward towards the new. And we kind of forget that we need to make peace with what we're letting go of, and sometimes that's a really, really long process. And sometimes it kind of all happens at the same time, right? It's not like you let go and then there's nothing and then something new is born. It's kind of you're letting go of some bits and you're kind of processing all this stuff all the time. I think about this all the time because of our decision to move to Ireland. So we want to move to Ireland, and yet our life here in Belgium is awesome and we love it. We love our house and we love, our son's school, and like it's all really, really great. And sometimes I think I am going to miss this so much. Yeah. Sometimes I think these are the best years of our lives, and like it's never going to be as good as this. And of course, that's not true. Yeah. Because we wouldn't be moving if we didn't think that it would be even better. And we know that it's going to be really hard to let go of this house and to let go of this life. And yet we know that, that the next step is even better and it's the right thing. So it's kind of like, for me, that kind of grief and letting go is kind of happening at the same time as the stepping into. And I guess that's true for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes there's a point where you start letting go of the old thing and you still don't have the new thing. You're not like fully into that. And so you've got the middle part where you feel like crap because you don't feel like you don't have anything. And it's like,
Yeah. For the people who are listening to this podcast, probably, you're people with big dreams and ambitious people and people who want to achieve something or create something. So you are likely to be on a life path that includes a lot of growth. And that means that, every few months you're going to be growing. And so something will need to fall away to make space for the new. So you're probably, I would think that you're all probably going through this process all the time. Yeah. Like, I think I go through this process all the time, constantly in my business, constantly in my work. I need to let other things fall away in order to make space for new things. And that's just the way it is. And sometimes it hurts more than others.
Exactly. Growing pains. Like,
growing pains.
They're a thing with personal development as well.
For sure. And with everything, right? Because every change in life, like you kind of, you have to let go of the old. Like when you become the mother, you let go of being the maiden. When you become the crone, you let go of being the mother. Like it's all stages that are mutually exclusive. Almost, right? Yeah. So not almost, actually mutually exclusive. They can't be almost mutually exclusive, can they? And I think I don't know, because we're not kind of raised normally in a culture of self-kindness and self-compassion, we don't have this reflex to kind of be gentle with ourselves during transition times, and to say it's okay. Like it's okay to want the new thing and also feel like you're going to miss the old thing so much. Yeah. That's okay.
Yeah. It's like we feel that it has to be all or nothing, black and white, this or that. And there is a transition. It's not just this is over and now you have the new thing.
Yeah. And I think it's so important to just be nice to yourself and just be like, it's okay. Like you've lost something that's really, really big and really important. And it was really great. And that doesn't mean that you'll never have anything great again. Maybe the next thing or probably the next thing is even greater. Yeah, so I think that kindness is really important anyway.
Yeah, and I did not have a lot of that with myself on Monday. I was really kind of beating myself up about it. And then again, I lost 3 hours messing around with Google support. And so I didn't get any work done. And then after I found out that I couldn't fix it, I was extra bummed. And so I just like deleted everything from my calendar. And I was like, I didn't get anything done today. And what's worse, I lost something. So it was like, I didn't go into that compassion.
Doesn't sound like kindness. No.
It wasn't. So...
Yeah, so maybe like, like I always say, like, I'm not a big person for ritual, but what I mean by that is I'm not a big person for like sacred ritual with like rules and stuff. But I am really big on marking things, and kind of intentionally marking things. So maybe what you need to do, Holly, and anybody who's going through, something where you need to let go of something old, is mark it. It's like, just, even if it's like half an hour in your calendar that just says, goodbye to old YouTube channel. Like, it sounds a bit silly.
Yeah.
But just to intentionally say, okay, make peace with it. Like, it's okay. Like, you've served a really great purpose in my life and my business. And now I'm moving on to something else. And that's it. I let you go. Right. Because what we don't want is to keep dragging our feet. Right. So like, Holly, this. I always talk about the soul trying to guide us towards what's right for us, towards kind of the things that are really aligned. So I say like towards big success, but that makes it seem like towards awesome, amazing, giant things in the world. That's not always it. Towards whatever success is aligned with you, and the soul is guiding you towards that. And we, like, as the personality, as the ego, we drag our feet and we say, I'm not good enough yet. I'm not ready. I need to know more. I need to this. And like I always say that it's like the soul dragging you like a sack of potatoes. So like, it's like you're going either way. Yeah. But if you're going to be the sack of potatoes,
it's going to be harder.
It's going to be hard. Yeah. And that's all it is. It's just like that resistance to the next thing.
Yeah. Even though part of you wants the new thing or the next thing.
This is it, right? And this is why we're calling this episode, Do You Really Want What You Say You Want? And so like, it's important to make that distinction between wanting something, it comes from the ego self, from the personality, and choosing for something, which is the language of the soul, right? So whenever you say like, oh, I really want this, but it's not coming, ask yourself, are you choosing for it? And more importantly, perhaps, where are you not choosing for it? Like, where are you still choosing for what you currently have rather than the new reality that you say you want? It might be just small things, like, I don't know, like if you want to be really fit, but you're choosing to watch Netflix for 17 hours a day. Yeah. So some of them might be really obvious.
Yeah.
And some of them will not be very obvious, but it's a good practice to be honest with yourself on that.
Yeah. Yeah, because change, it's like part of us wants change, part of us wants a new thing, and part of us wants to stay where we are because it's safe. It's the comfort zone. It's what's known. The new thing sounds exciting, but what if it's disappointing? Or what if it's not all that we imagined? Or what if we fail? Or what if it's a disappointment? Like,
yeah, what really kind of settles me when I'm in that state is I remind myself that it's only going to be uncomfortable for a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Like the new thing will become my new reality, and then that will be my comfort zone.
Yes.
And that's true, because when you look back on your life, that's always been the case, right? Like there's been something a bit more challenging, and you've done it, and now that feels comfortable, and the next thing is challenging. So it will change, so you will be comfortable again. And then you will be called to be uncomfortable again as you grow. And, and maybe this is a good time to underline that it's okay if you want to stay.
Yeah.
Like, there's no judgment there, right? Like, if you're comfortable where you are, there's no right or wrong. Like, I remind myself of this all the time. I actually, I tell myself, we don't have to move, right? There's actually nothing that's pressing us to move to Ireland. So this is my choice on a daily basis. We can make this choice as a family, and we can change our minds. And we can stay here. Yesterday, there was an ad for a school in my Instagram feed, and I went to look at it.
Oh.
And I was like, if I find the perfect school here, maybe, then we can stay. Like, you always kind of want to stay in your comfort zone because, as you say, like, it's nice here.
Yeah, it's comfy.
And it's comfy, and that's okay. Like, I don't think, I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily, but you have to be kind of clear about the things that you want.
Yeah.
And the things that you're choosing for, the things that you're willing to align with.
Yeah.
The change can only with the alignment of energy.
Exactly. And you have to be conscious of what decision you're making. I mean, there are times, because I do so much mindset work and I'm changing, and like there are times where I get to the point where I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. I just want to I want things to be easy for a while. And that's when it would be natural to just stay where you are for a little bit. And then when you're ready, you move on. So I think pay attention to where you are and what you need and want.
And what decisions you're making.
Yeah.
I think that's a really important point. It's very different to stay where you are because you think nothing more is possible, or you're too scared to do anything. And you're constantly kind of miserable where you are, and you complain about where you are and you don't like it, but you don't do anything. That's a really crappy place to be living your life from, right?
Absolutely.
But if you consciously say, you know what? It's not worth the hassle. For me, it's not worth the hassle of growing.
Yeah.
I am going to just live my life out in this comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine, as long as that's a conscious choice and what you really want.
Mm.
And it might be what you really want today, and then tomorrow you'll say, actually, I'm ready to do this new thing. And sometimes, like in Holly's case, you might say you're comfortable here, and the soul, the higher self, will decide. Although you did still have a choice, right? You could have checked on those email addresses. You could have checked on those emails. So there is something there. And you knew that it was the right thing to just ignore it.
There was part of me, I was aware that if I didn't access these Google accounts, those email addresses would go away. And I was like, that's great, because I haven't used them in a long time. One of them was, I think it was my super old business, Socially Holistic. I was like, great, this is great. It'll get cleaned up. I don't need that stuff. I consciously thought at least one point, great, this is going to get cleaned up. I just didn't want YouTube account to get cleaned up as well, But of course, they're linked.
Yeah, and clearly that was the way. If you wanted to get things cleaned up, then it included that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think sometimes we don't really understand what's involved in the cleaning up or in that next step. And so we can get a bit surprised. But when you actually look at it, when you take the emotion out of it, you can see that this is exactly the right thing that happened.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of me sees that, but part of me is still like, nah.
Well, it only happened this week. So give yourself a breathing period. That's actually a really good question to ask. And I try to, I was doing something this morning that I thought was going to be easy, and then it turned out to be really complicated. And there were all these administrative rules that they weren't allowing me to do what I want and all these things. And instead of getting frustrated, I was like, okay, how can this be exactly the right thing? What if this is exactly the right thing? What is this showing me? Where is it leading me, so that it always works out in my best interest? So this is an intention that I have set for my life a while ago, to always believe that everything that happens, it makes sure that everything works out perfectly for me. Everything always happens in my best interest.
Okay.
So I'm always very aware, when something happens, I'm like, well, how is this happening for my best interest? Yeah. And it kind of just changes the perspective a little bit and allows you to see the way forward and how it's okay, basically, instead of getting stuck and being upset with things.
Yeah. Yes. So I feel like we need to talk about self-sabotage, because I often think of self-sabotage as my subconscious mind trying to keep me safe in my comfort zone. But this is a very different kind of self-sabotage. And it's also part of me knew, I know that a Google account is linked to a YouTube channel. I know that they're the same company. So part of me knew that by letting this Google account get cleaned up, that my YouTube account would also get cleaned up. I wasn't totally ignorant to the process. So I think part of my mind did, and I say this with air quotes, self-sabotage, because part of my brain probably knew that was the only way I was going to let go of that.
I don't see how it's sabotage. Because you're coming from the assumption that losing the YouTube account is a bad thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Whereas I'm coming from the assumption that losing the YouTube account is the best possible thing.
No, and I agree it's the best possible thing, but there's a part of my brain that sees it as sabotage still.
Yeah, but it's not, right? Yeah. If you had gone against what you felt was right and rescued those email addresses, that would have been self-sabotage, because you would have self-sabotaged your future success or your future alignment.
By not letting go of the old stuff.
By not letting go of the old stuff.
Okay.
Right?
I'm still wrapping my head around this. Because like I said, there's a part of me that's still oh.
And it's very easy, obviously, for me to say, as an observer, rather than as the one involved in it. But like, I'll share an example that I'm grappling with, trying to get to terms with for the moment as well. So I've been for probably over a year, because I looked back on the first email about this that you sent me, Holly, and it was about over a year ago.
Oh, wow.
I've been wanting to build a community on Patreon. So Holly has already done this. I've been really wanting to do it because my Facebook group is dead. There's no engagement in there. And I would really like to have a place besides my membership community, kind of for a wider community of people to explore the Soul Smart way and the Soul Smart concepts and all these things. And one of the things that I want to do is move the weekly channeled message I send out with my newsletter to Patreon. That would mean that the message, which I send out weekly, which is now for free, would be paid, but it would be paid from like $1 a month, right? Like it's not a huge thing. But I've been sitting on this for months. First of all, I wouldn't even consider the possibility of doing this. And second of all, now I've been sitting on it for months because I'm afraid that I'll move it and nobody will pay me the $1. And therefore, what does that mean? That means that, this message that I have been, kind of putting my heart into every week, once a week for the past like 5 or 6 years hasn't been valued or enough, like valued.
Yeah, it's not valued enough to pay $1 a month to get 4
so that's
weekly
25
messages.
cents per message.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. What if it's not even worth that in the eyes of the readers?
Yeah. So on the one hand, I have this like version of my colorful future where I have my paid community, the Soul Space, and I also have this wider community to share my message with. That's engaged and wonderful. It's all rosy in there. And on the other hand, I'm dragging my feet and I'm unwilling to let go of the old in terms of the old way of doing things or the old way of delivering that content. And I've been sitting on this for ages. And Holly has been saying the same things that I'm saying to her on this podcast, like move on and this and that and whatever. And I'm just like, I can't quite, like, it's not quite. So I say that I want it, and yet I'm not aligning my actions with what I say I want. So in fact, what am I choosing for? I'm choosing to stay right where I am. Yeah. I'm choosing to not have that community.
Right now.
Hopefully tomorrow I'll choose to have it.
And also, when we started kind of picking up the conversation about Patreon last week or a couple weeks ago, whenever it was, you came up with the idea of transferring your weekly message from the email newsletter to Patreon. And I said, yes, but I told you that a year ago. And you said no. And you didn't even remember that we had that conversation because you were so close to the idea. It was like your brain was like, nope, reject.
Yeah, I remember having the conversation about Patreon a year ago, but I do not remember you suggesting that I move the channeled message to be paid over in Patreon. Yeah, and it's clear that this has been a really, really difficult part of my path, right? And it's been a part of like owning that I have something to say that's of value in the newsletter. For years, I did that message so that people had value from my newsletter, as if nothing else I can say had any value besides that message, right? And now, so if nothing I ever say or put out there, except for that one paragraph of a message, has any value, and then I transfer it to Patreon and nobody pays me 25 cents, that also has no value. Then that means like none of my work ever had any value. Right? So we make these things out to be really big, and then it's really easy to drag our feet and make up all sorts of excuses like I don't have time and I don't have this and I don't know and blah, blah, blah. And I've been making them for, I'm being totally honest, for a year. I've been making these excuses for a year. So hopefully by the time this goes live, we'll be able to link to my Patreon account.
And also for those of you who are listening and are thinking about Patreon, they're increasing their fees. So if you're interested, you need to set it up like now within the next couple of weeks because they're going to be increasing their fees. And if you start now, you get grandfathered into the old fee system. So do it.
So there, that was my nudge that Holly brought to my attention a few weeks ago, which is what started this up again. And still, we've had this conversation now kind of ongoing for the past 2 or 3 weeks. And I still haven't done it. I've talked about it, but I haven't done it. So that's the self-sabotage, right? So when we talk about self-sabotage, we're talking about like us sabotaging having what we say we want.
Yeah. So what are some signs that you're dragging your feet? Like people who are listening to this, like how can they know if they're dragging their feet in their life?
Well, when you're not doing the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like when you say you want a business and you spend your day, I don't know, cooking, right? I mean,
Yeah.
when what you're actually giving your attention to and your focus to isn't the thing that you say you want. Like,
Mm.
I would be very, very curious about where in your life you're using the word want in
Yeah.
that kind of childlike, whiny way, right? But
Ah.
I really want it,
Yeah.
right? I want it so bad
Yeah.
that, like, where are you saying that, right?
Mm.
Like, if only like somebody would give me $1 million, like, or like I really want to be making that kind of money.
Yes.
Where are you saying it with that energy?
And I feel like when you change the language from want to choosing for, that also implies taking action.
Oh
Because if
yeah.
I choose for, or if I choose for $1 million year in my business, or for my next book launch or whatever, that means that I have to take the action to get there.
But exactly, that it puts your
Whereas
energy
want is
it.
like, I just want it. I want it.
When you want something, and this is why like it's that child energy that's really interesting, right? Because if you want something, like as a child, you're not in control of a lot of the things that you want and
Yeah.
don't get, right? So it's that when you're in the want energy, then you're leaving the responsibility to somebody else. Because that's always, like when you continue the sentence, it's always followed up by the energy of, but I'm not getting it. Like they're not giving it to me, right?
Yeah.
So it's, I want it. And it's so unfair because life hasn't delivered this or the universe hasn't delivered it. That's always the energy. And if you're resistant to this, then be very honest with yourself and journal it out. And you'll
Yeah.
see that it's always this energy to wanting something really badly, right? It's something like you against something where like you're waiting for something to give it to you.
Yeah.
Choosing for brings the responsibility back to you. It's based on an assumption that you have that power to choose, that it's there for you to take if you choose to take it.
Yeah.
And that there's something that you can do to align your energy with that. And when I say do, it's not only like action, like doing action, it's also like being action,
Yeah.
becoming energy of what you want, the essence of what you want.
As you're talking, I'm thinking like, I can't wait to grab my journal and like on one page, write down like, what are all the things that I want? And then change that language on the facing page to like, I choose for this. And then like seeing what comes up there.
Yeah. And you want a third column?
Okay. Yes.
I'm going to totally make this worksheet. And you want a third column that's about like, if I choose for this, what does it mean? Like, what do I need to do? What do I need to be? What do I need to let go of?
Okay.
If I'm choosing for this, right?
Okay.
As I say this, I'm like, I need to apply this to my own writing practice because I keep saying I want to write a book and I'm not doing any writing. So
who do you need to be? What do you need to believe? What?
So if I want to write a book and I choose to write a book, those are two very different things, right?
Yeah.
So how you asked me how people can tell that they're dragging their feet.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, like if you're not getting what you want, then ask yourself, like, what is the secondary gain of staying exactly where you are?
Yeah. So let's talk about secondary gain, because I think people who are in like the coachy transformation industry know what we're talking about, but I realize that not everyone does. So secondary gain, that's like, what are you gaining from being right where you are right now? So like I say, I want the $1 million book launch, but if I don't get it and I stay where I am, what am I gaining? It's safe, it's comfy, like I know this space. I don't have to do all the extra work. I don't have to invest money to get the money back in the book launch, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things. Like the first time I heard of secondary gain, it was in terms of losing weight. It was in that context. So like I said, I wanted to lose weight, and someone asked me, well, what is the secondary gain? What are you gaining from being the weight you are now, right? And of course, like the usual things came up, like the simple things, I still get to eat what I want and But actually, there were deeper things involved there. Like it was a whole thing about identity and how I didn't want to be, like I wanted to be kind of the smart, entertaining person in the room, not being judged on my looks, but contributing,
with your brain.
That wit. Yeah. And so, I haven't lost the weight, so I guess I haven't quite, dealt with that piece. But it's true because I have a very, very like deeply ingrained desire to not be judged on my looks, because that's a different story, different conversation, but it comes from family conditioning. So yes, that was my secondary gain. And that's really, really big, because still now I'm like, I don't want to be judged on my looks. I don't want people to like want to be in my space or work with me or watch my videos because I'm a certain weight. Because I'm pretty. Yeah.
I only watch your YouTube videos because you're pretty. Who cares about the content? You're pretty.
I know. Does anybody even do that? Okay. This is like a totally silly conversation.
But no, it's not a silly conversation, because we have these beliefs. Like, for me with my weight loss, a lot of the mindset work that I did was around being safe, because I didn't believe that I was safe if I was thinner, because then I would get more attention from men, and that's not safe. So, like, it sounds silly, but it's not, because our mind makes that stuff very important, and it keeps us stuck because it's safer to be where we are because all this stuff that we have in our heads.
So just ask yourself, like, I'm going to presume that like anybody listening to this episode is going to have something that they want to experience in their lives that they don't currently have, because presumably otherwise you'd be, I don't know, off enjoying whatever it is that you want. Instead of listening to an episode called Do You Really Want What You Say You Want? So just like whatever it is that you don't yet have, like journal it out. Like, why would you not want it? Like, just turn it around. Like, what would be some really negative things about getting it? And try to go deep. There's one exercise that I got from something called Access Consciousness. Yeah. It's not an Access Consciousness exercise, but it's kind of, that's where I first heard of this way of doing it. Whenever you're listing things, whenever you're listing reasons, or like reasons for wanting something or not wanting something, or like where you're trying to go deeper, make sure you list like 20. Because the first 10, 15 are going to be the really like surface level stuff. Like in my weight loss example, like I wouldn't be able to eat junk food anymore if I'm committed to being slim and healthy, right? Yeah. But actually the deep stuff comes after. So you kind of have to like clear
the surface level stuff.
Yeah. Like be aware of that stuff before you can even like be aware of anything underneath. So whenever you're making these lists, just make sure like you set yourself a goal of like 20, at least 10. Yeah. And try to get to 20 so that you can go deeper.
Yeah. Oh, because that's where you get the stuff that you think that sounds ridiculous, but it's not, because your mind believes it. And it's very real.
Yeah, and your mind will kind of keep you focused on the surface level stuff, because that's where you kind of exist most of the time, is in the conscious mind. And the conscious mind is only 5% of what's stored in there. So you really have to do a little bit of digging and like just allow the space for those things to come up.
And then what can people do? So if like I see I'm dragging my feet, I get clear on why. Like, what can people do to stop dragging their feet?
You make a different choice.
And take a different action.
Like, people hate this. Yeah. And I understand why completely, because, like, it'd be nice if it was just magically delivered. Mm. But really, everything hinges on those choices that you make daily. Like, if all we have is the present moment, then everything in your kind of what you call your future hinges on what you choose in this moment. Yeah. Right? So, like, if you choose to eat a whole bag of potato chips, you'll have a different sort of outcome than if you choose to go for a run.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, and there are probably some beliefs entangled in that. Like that's a very kind of very basic example, because there are beliefs entangled in that running is good for you and potato chips are bad for you, which I don't necessarily agree with. No. But just as a very simple, basic example that people can relate to, like every choice will impact your reality in some way. So if you want something different to what you're currently getting, you're going to have to make a different choice.
Anything, even if it's something small, like you've got just something different.
Something different.
Yeah.
So you can start small. I had a conversation with my coach yesterday about starting a walking habit again, because I've gotten super lazy. And I find a million excuses for why it's not convenient for me to leave the house ever at all, She suggested 10 minutes a day, to commit to 10 minutes a day. And I was like, that seems like a waste of time to commit to something so small. But it's not about the thing. It's about your commitment to the thing and to creating that habit to be like whenever Holly, like whenever I talk about like moving into that new version of yourself, the whole soul smart concept, we talk about this idea like to become the person for whom the reality you want is natural.
Yes.
Right? So that you're not striving to be something or you're trying to be something, but you're just the kind of person for whom the success, it just comes because that's who you are. You're Holly and you're a best-selling author. And that's just who you are. There's no striving or trying involved. That's just your reality. It's natural. Based on what the choices based on the fact that you actually sat your butt down in a chair and wrote your books, as opposed to some other people who will remain unnamed.
But also, and I think this is an excellent example, actually, because this is my 9th book. But a lot of people don't know I've written 9 books because I didn't talk that much about the first 8 books. I sat down, my butt down, wrote the books, published them, and very quietly launched them. So some people knew about them, some people read them, but not the wider, overarching community of people that know about this book, because I have talked about this book in a bigger way, I've promoted the book in a bigger way, I've invested in the book in a bigger way, and I'm getting it out there in a bigger way, which was my intention. But I had to do a lot of different things and spend a lot more money on the project and take a lot of different actions with this book. And the energy around this launch is completely different. And I have to say, I worked a lot. My calendar's been like booked for the last couple of months, but it wasn't stressful. It wasn't hard. I was just choosing differently and choosing to take different actions. And I'm getting a different result already.
But you were aligning with a different energy. So like with the other books, you were kind of like aligning with the energy of being a writer, like you're someone who writes books, and that's fine. That's what you did. Yeah. But here you were aligning with becoming known for this message and really stepping into this kind of leader space around this messaging. And so you had to do a lot of different things, like let go of a lot of your business. Yeah. Like now apparently let go of your YouTube channel. Right? Like it's not the same things. Like I think so one of the things to get really, really clear on is what you want to align with. Yeah. Right? Like it's not just, there's a difference between maybe aligning with writer and aligning with author. Yeah. Like, there's a difference between aligning with money and aligning with wealth. Yeah. Energies of all these things are very, very different. And like by the time this goes live, I should have a new freebie thing in my space that helps people figure this out. Because I've recognized that element of really becoming super clear on what it is that you want or what it is that you should be going for right now. What's that right thing for you? That's really hard for people because there's so many choices. And so much ego stuff involved and so much pushing and pulling in various directions that it's really hard to settle on that thing. So I'm just working on something. So we can link to that in the show notes as well when it comes up. Yes, absolutely. And we can also link to your new Patreon community in the show notes. Maybe. We'll see. Hopefully. Okay. I am going to choose for... Stop saying that I want this, and I'm going to choose for this instead. So I'm going to do it. So yeah, I'll commit. Yay! Yeah, and for all you listeners, just be very, very aware of what you're committing to and where you're saying that you want something, but you're not actually making the choices that support that thing that you want, that are not aligned. Yeah, and to me, that image of that card really sticks in my mind. So think about where you're stepping into the color world and where parts of you are still in the black and white world of the old identity, the old life, the old comfort zone. Yeah, and I don't think it's always a big struggle. Look, your YouTube channel, it's not like that was weighing down on you or anything. This whole time that you were stepping into this best-selling author identity, that it's not like that was weighing you down or it was a problem in any way. No, absolutely not. Right? Yeah. And yet it's still misaligned. Yeah. And only now that it's gone do we see exactly how misaligned it was, because now it makes perfect sense. So it's, I'm saying this so that, to make sure that nobody goes into that judgment space or only focuses on the things that are really obvious, but just become aware of everything, learn to question everything. Yeah. And whether it's really aligned. And this is something I talk about a lot as well, is that commitment, that recommitment idea. So my husband and I, we had a hand fasting when we got married, which is an old pagan ceremony. And in the very, 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 very olden days, they used to have that ceremony every year and a day. So you would commit to the other person for a year and a day, and then you would reassess. And I always thought that was really cool,
I like it.
Sadly, my husband did not want to have a wedding ceremony every year. So we didn't have agreement on that.
But you've committed.
Yeah, but the concept I really, really like, that you only commit for a year and a day. You don't kind of clutch on to what you think is right in that moment. You leave space for the possibility to change your mind.
Yeah.
And so keep recommitting to the stuff in your business, keep recommitting to the stuff in your life. Keep recommitting to the stuff you've worked on and worked towards and now achieved, because they might be
obsolete a year from now or 6 months from now. Like, reevaluate constantly. Is this what I still want to be focusing on?
Exactly. I think we've exhausted this.
Yeah, I think so. And I think we've explored the topic well enough to help people who are in this situation where they're half in black and white and half in color. And they want to move their flamingo forward.
Yes. Half in the old and half in the new. Dragging their feet, procrastinating.
Yes.
Not yet experiencing what they say they want.
Yeah.
And if you do have any questions, then you can always email either of us. I'm at joanna@joannahennon.com, or
Holly@hollywharton.com, or social media, Facebook, Twitter. I'm getting more active on Twitter lately, which I love. So yeah, anywhere. All right. Thank you for listening.
Bye.
Bye. That's all for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode and found it interesting and useful. Thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're already subscribed, please leave me a review. It would mean the world to me. Thank you so much. Next week's episode, I'm not 100% sure what it is. I had some things kind of rearrange themselves in my schedule for this week. Hopefully it will be what I planned. If not, you will have something else. As always, I will try to make it interesting and useful to you. So remember to visit hollywharton.com/301 for the show notes on this episode. And remember, you've got journal prompts and the exercise. You've got all kinds of stuff in there. So you've got lots of juicy stuff to go along with this week's episode. Thank you very much. Have a fantastic week. Thanks so much for listening to Into the Woods with Holly Wharton. You can find more information about today's episode, including links for topics that were discussed, at hollywharton.com. That's HOLLYWORTON.com. If you'd like to connect with other listeners and get support on your journey, I would love for you to join my private community on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. That's patreon.com/Holly Wharton. Thank you so much for listening, and I look forward to seeing you next week.